Can search and AI bots see all the content on your website? To answer that question, we need to know how our website is rendered. So rendering is the process of the browser getting all the code from the server and then turning all that code from the server into a visible web page. So if rendering is broken or incomplete, then search engines and AI tools, they aren't going to be able to crawl our website. They aren't going to be able to see all the content contained on our website. And if they can't see all the content contained on our website, then search bots aren't going to be able to index our content. AI bots aren't going to be able to train on our content. And if they can't index or train on our content, then our website isn't going to show up in rankings or AI responses. That means lost visibility, lost traffic, and possibly lost conversions as well from that traffic. So we need to test out rendering to make sure that our web pages are rendered in a way that search bots and AI bots are able to view all of our website's content. So in this video, I want to walk you through 5 different methods we can use to understand how our pages are rendered and what bots are able to see. I'm going to talk through 2 different browser extensions, talk through a few different things you can do in Google's Chrome DevTools, and also show you how to verify things in Google Search Console and also Bing Webmaster tools. So let's jump right in to the first method, which is the Toggle JavaScript extension. So the Toggle JavaScript extension is available in the Chrome Web Store. Simply go to the Chrome Web Store, search Toggle JavaScript, and then you can add this extension to Chrome. Once you do add this to Chrome, you're going to see a new icon appear in your extension tray, and that gives you the ability to turn JavaScript on or off. Now, this extension is really simple, right? It lets you turn JavaScript completely on or completely off. Now, Google's crawlers are more sophisticated than that. Google is able to execute some JavaScript, though not all JavaScript. However, what I like about Toggle.js is that it gives you the ability to mimic sort of a worst case scenario. If Google is unable to load any of your JavaScript at all, what do they see? Now, the other thing I like about this extension is that this mimics what OpenAI, Perplexity, and other AI bots are currently doing on your websites. Currently, as best as we can tell, OpenAI's bots, Perplexity's bots, and other AI bots, they aren't able to execute JavaScript on websites. Now, that's likely to change in the future, but for right now, by using Toggle.js, by turning JavaScript off completely, you can get a pretty good idea of what AI bots are seeing or are not seeing on your website. So let me show you how this works. Hopping back over to the browser, I've got a demo page set up. And on this demo page, we can see how the Toggle.js extension works. So if we scroll through this page with JavaScript turned on, we can get a sense of what content is here. We've got some images, some paragraphs, we've got a green box, and maybe that's containing like a really key piece of information or something. And then we've got a footer down here with a sign-up form. Okay, it's obviously a very simple page, but we can turn JavaScript off and see what happens. So right away, we can see one big problem. By turning JavaScript off, our header image disappeared. Now, maybe this header image was just decorative and not that important for bots to see, in which case, no big deal. In other cases, maybe this was a really key image that they needed to see to understand the page. Maybe this image helped set the intent of the page. Maybe this image was a key product photo. In that case, you want to make sure that bots can see that. So the fact that this is loaded via JavaScript might potentially be a problem. Scrolling down the page, we can also see that that green box went away. So if that green box contained really critical content that we want bots to be able to see, well, it's gone now. And as a result of it being gone, then we're not going to be showing that content to bots. And if bots needed to see that to index the page correctly or train on the page correctly, that's a bit of a problem. We can also see down here at the bottom, our footer went away and was replaced by an error message instead. So this potentially would be a problem as well. Now, obviously, this is a test page that I set up just to experiment with things and show some examples of what might happen, but this mimics what I see on real websites. When you turn JavaScript off, you'll see a lot of content disappear. And if you see that content go away, you need to step through and really start to decide, okay, is this content something that's really important for bots to see or not? And if you have a lot of important content that appears to only be loaded via JavaScript, you need to dig deeper. And that brings us to the second method, which is another browser extension that we can use called View Rendered Source. So view rendered source is also available in the Chrome Web Store. Search for that, and then you can add it to Chrome, and then you'll see a new icon appear here with a V, and that's for view rendered source. So let me show you how this works. So back over on our test page, I'm going to turn JavaScript back on. So that way we're really rendering the page. We have a clear idea of what the page looks like when it's rendered. And once the page has finished rendering, we're going to click on view rendered source. What this is going to show us is a raw view, a rendered view, and then the difference between the two. So the raw view, that's what we get back from the server. So the server is sending back this content, and this raw content, this raw code, this is what we're guaranteed bots can see, right? This is the content that Google definitely will see, OpenAI will definitely see, Perplexity will definitely see. So anything in the raw code, we can be pretty certain that bots are going to be able to see this, train on it, index based on it. And that is where we want to make sure all of our real critical content is contained. The rendered code shows you what the content looks like after JavaScript has executed. So this shows you anything that might come in as a result of JavaScript loading on the page. And then we can also see the difference between the two. And I like to use the difference when I'm running an analysis on a website to just get an idea of how this is rendered, what content is coming in, what content is being changed by JavaScript. So in the difference, red shows anything removed by JavaScript, green shows anything added by JavaScript. And scrolling through, we can see some instances of this, right? We have our hero image that's added via JavaScript. That green box we were looking at, that paragraph is added via JavaScript. Though interestingly, down here, that footer that we were looking at, that form that went away when we turned off JavaScript, it's here in the code and it's not highlighted. So that means that it wasn't added via JavaScript. And if we go back over to the raw view, we do see that form contained here. So what that means is that JavaScript wasn't loading this particular form, rather it was showing that particular form. And this is one of those question marks of what Google's going to do with it or what AI bots are going to do with that. They might see it in the raw code, but if they see that it's in the raw code and then bots understand that, yeah, but you're not presenting that to visitors until JavaScript executes, that might present a problem. And in this case, it's a sign-up form, so maybe not that big of a deal. But if this sign-up form was instead really critical content on your website, maybe a real key product description or part of a blog post, well, you'd want to make sure that Google is handling that correctly. Ideally, you'd probably want to display that content within the raw code and not rely on JavaScript to show it on here. I see this happen a lot of times with different kinds of effects that are used to load content. So maybe you have a fade-in effect or something that happens as you scroll down the page that slides content in from the side. It looks cool, but it can present problems for bots being able to understand content correctly. And this helps you pick up on that and spot some of those differences within here. Now, if you start to see some problems with JavaScript and how your page is being rendered, you need to then start talking to developers and ask developers to move content that's currently loaded via JavaScript to be loaded by the server instead. We want to move it out of rendered code into raw code. And that way, by moving it into raw code, we're making it more reliable that bots are going to be able to see this content when they're crawling our pages. So we want to know, well, how do we actually communicate that to developers? One thing is we could just tell them what the content is, but maybe we want to give them just a little bit more detail. And that's where Chrome DevTools comes in handy. So going back over to our test page, let me show you how DevTools works. So once you load the page that you want to test and understand how it's rendered, right-click and choose Inspect. This will open up DevTools. And under DevTools, we want to go to Network. Now, if you don't see network across the top, just hit the double arrows and then you'll see network listed here. Network is going to show you a table or a list of all the different files that are needed to load this page. You might see a few here depending on what's happening on your page. So if you do see some here, go ahead and click the clear network log icon here just to wipe everything out and then reload the page. That way we're getting a fresh view of the page. And when you reload the page, you're going to see all the files that are needed to construct this particular page. So in this case, we have the page itself, we have a CSS file, we have different JavaScript files, we have images. Now, in the case of this test page, we've only got 15 requests that are being made, so not very much. But on real websites, you might see dozens of requests or even hundreds of requests that come in. And it can be a little hard to go through and find everything in here or find all the JavaScript files in here. So you can use the filter across the top. And we can filter in this case to JS or JavaScript. And by filtering down, we can see all of the JavaScript files. In this case, there's 3 JavaScript files. And if we want to ask a developer to move some kind of content from the rendered code over to the raw code, it's helpful to tell the developer which of those JavaScript files is involved. That might also help you, if you are the developer, understand what exactly you need to change. Now, in this case, the JavaScript files are named pretty simply: hero image, CTA scroll, and add paragraph, so we can have a reasonable idea what each of those is doing. In real sites, though, these will rarely have very decipherable names, right? You'll see something that maybe just has a string of numbers in here, or you'll see something that's just called common or main. That doesn't really help us understand what that JavaScript does or which JavaScript file is going to need to change in order to alter how the page is rendered. So in here, what we can do to start understanding what each of these files does is we can block it when it loads the page. So let's say, for example, we want to block CTA scroll.js, and we want to understand, well, what does this do? So if we right click on this, we can then go to block request URL. This will then block that request, so that way when we reload the page, it will reload without that JavaScript file present. So now that I've got this blocked, I'll refresh the page. And so as we scroll down, we do not see our call to action down at the bottom of the page. And we can go through and we can do this for other files as well. For example, if we want to block the add paragraph JavaScript file, we can block that, and then we can refresh the page. Now we don't have the call to action at the bottom, and we don't have the paragraph either. So it starts giving us an idea of what these files do. And obviously on bigger websites, more complex uses of JavaScript, you're going to get different results. You're going to have to step through lots of different files to start to understand what each of them does, but it can help speed up the implementation of a fix, moving things from the rendered code over to the raw code. Now, one other thing we can do within DevTools that's really helpful to test things out is we can change how the page is loaded. Not just which files are loaded, but the different conditions under which the page loads, and we can see how that affects rendering, or if it affects rendering. So going back over to DevTools, let's unblock these 2 files, so that way we can load the page correctly. And then we're going to go to network conditions. If you don't see network conditions listed down here, go up to the triple dots up top, go to more tools, and then under more tools, you can select network conditions. Once you've got network conditions up, and then you're on that panel, go to the throttling section. So under network throttling, we can slow down the load of our page. So for example, I'll change this to 3G, so that way we have a really slow load of our page. And by loading it really slowly, we're going to see if that breaks anything. Sometimes when I slow the connection down, JavaScript files fail to load. Maybe third parties don't connect correctly and some kind of content goes away. And that is important to know, one, because it might be actually affecting visitors coming to the page, but it's also important to know because bots may struggle with that. They may be loading the page more slowly for one reason or another, and as a result, they're going to have problems building the page and seeing all the page's content. So now that we have that slowed down, let's refresh the page and see what happens. So if I refresh the page, we can see that it starts to come in pretty slowly. We can see that these files are taking a while to load. The images are taking a while to load, but it does look like all of our content is present on this page. That isn't always the case. So depending on what you find, what you might discover is that you don't actually have a problem with JavaScript files. You do have a problem with speed instead. And that speed is causing rendering to not work correctly. So you actually need to solve the speed problem instead of solving a direct rendering problem. All right, now that we've talked about how we can use extensions and DevTools to understand something about how the page is rendered, we want to actually try this out with a real bot and see what bots are able to do on the page. So one way we can do that is in Google Search Console using the URL inspection tool. URL inspection lets you see how Googlebot is crawling your page in real time. You can get an idea of what Google is able to render or not. You can get an idea of what content Google can see or not. So this can help you verify where you might actually have a problem or not. You turn JavaScript off, or you look at view rendered source and you see, oh yeah, this content, it's loaded via JavaScript. Is that a problem? Well, by looking at Google's URL inspection tool, you can see whether it is a problem or not. Do you see Google loading this content or not? So in Google Search Console, go up to the top of the page and then enter in the URL that you want to test. The initial report that will come back will be the current state. In this case, I'm looking at a test page, so this page is not indexed. But in your case, if the page is something that is already in the index, you might have a different response coming back here. But we don't want to pay attention to the crawled state of this page. Rather, what we want to do to understand rendering is we want to test the live URL. So if you click Test Live URL, it will run a live crawl of the website where it will go and fetch and render that content, and we can see what Google is able to render on this page, what content they're able to look at. So when this finishes running, we can click on View Tested Page, and then we can look at the HTML and we can see what's in here. So if we scroll through the HTML, we see that the hero image is present, meaning that Google was able to execute that JavaScript and render the page with the hero image present. If we continue scrolling down, we can also see that this paragraph that was added on here is also present. So Google was able to execute that JavaScript correctly as well. And scrolling down, we do see the form is present as well on here. So that indicates Google was probably able to render the page correctly. Instead of looking at the HTML, we can also click on Screenshot and we can view what the page looks like. So if we scroll through the page, maybe there's some problems loading images here that we need to investigate, but the call to action box, right, this green box that we have here that we know is loaded via JavaScript, Google was able to load that. So that's good news that maybe Google is able to load the page correctly. Now, I really like URL inspection because it does give you a pretty clear idea of what Google is able to crawl on your website or not. It gives you a good sense of whether or not you have a problem with how the pages are rendered currently or not. Sometimes I run URL inspection on JavaScript heavy pages and the screenshot comes back blank or almost blank. In that case, you know you have a problem that you need to actually solve. In other cases, you run URL inspect and you realize, oh, okay, things are loaded via JavaScript, but Google's maybe doing an okay job executing the important things on here, and I don't need to worry about this quite so much. So it helps you assess priority pretty well. The drawback to Google URL Inspect, though, is that it's only Googlebot, and there are other bots that we need to be thinking about. So one other tool we can use to understand a different bot's view is Bing Webmaster Tools. So in Bing Webmaster Tools, we can click on URL Inspection. And then when we click on URL Inspection, we can enter in the URL that we want to test. Similar to Google's URL Inspection, we can view the current state of this URL, what Bing currently knows about the URL, what Bing is currently doing about the URL. But to test rendering, we want to click on Live URL. This will also run a live crawl of the website where we'll go and it will fetch the page and try to render any JavaScript available on the page so we can see what Bing comes back with. So once the test finishes, you can click View Tested Page, and then this will show you the HTML that returned. Now, unfortunately, in Bing Webmaster Tools, this view isn't particularly helpful. If your HTML is on one line and you can't scroll over to actually view it, that's not super helpful. So what you'll need to do is select all of this code and then copy this and then paste this into Notepad. So I've pasted that over here in Notepad, and then we can go through and we can look at the HTML and see what's here. We see the header image is present on here. We see that paragraph is present as well, meaning that Bing was able to execute this JavaScript successfully as well. Now, keep in mind that we don't have a URL inspection tool for OpenAI, for Perplexity, for Claude, for any of the other AI bots that are out there. So we don't know, or at least we don't have a way to verify how those bots are rendering the page. But based on what others have found in different studies and tests, it does look like those bots are not able to execute as much JavaScript as Google or Bing. They may not be able to execute any JavaScript at all. So that's where those extensions of Toggle JS or View Rendered Source can be really helpful to understand what kinds of problems we may have for AI bots rendering our websites. If you need help testing how your website is rendering or figuring out how to improve how your website is rendered, please let me know. This is the kind of stuff I help clients with all the time. Be happy to talk with you about this and see if I can help you out. You can email me at matthew@elementive.com. If you liked this video, like to see more like it from Elementive, please subscribe. Thanks for watching.